Hey writers, Joe Bunting here with you. And in today's video, we're talking about story arcs, the different shapes that stories make, and how understanding your story arc can help you write a better story, maybe even a best-selling story. And by the way, this week, I'm teaching a live training about story arcs, story structure, and how you can use it to write best-selling books. It's completely free, and you can sign up with the link in the description. This training is this week only, though. So if you're able, make sure to sign up now. Today's video is a short excerpt from that training, so if you want more of this, make sure to sign up. All right, happy writing, and we'll see you soon.
Best-selling stories move. Best-selling stories change. There is some kind of movement through the value scale that happens in the story. So let me show you how this works, because what you can do is you can map out those value scales that we created visually like this. All right, so you have a positive value, and this is the negative value. So an example love story, love versus hate. Love is the positive value, of course. Hate, the negative. Indifference, the one in between. And your job as a writer is to move the story through that whole range of value. A story that just stays at one place is really boring. Readers want to see the conflict between those value scales. So the value needs to move throughout the story. So hate needs to turn into love, and maybe vice versa. If you just stay at love, that's really boring. If you just stay at hate, that's really boring. If you just stay in indifference, okay, you have to move through the entire value scale. And what's cool about this is that as your value scale moves, you can visualize it. So here's a simple axis. Here's the positive value, and here's the negative. We have the BE axis, the beginning and the end of the story. Kurt Vonnegut called it the BE axis. All right. And you can watch as your value scale maybe moves from hate to love, and then back to hate, and then into love again. Okay. And there's actually some research behind this. There's a team of researchers from the University of Vermont who actually fed 4,000 of the best books of all time into a computer to find the different shapes that stories make on this scale. And they found that stories actually take 6 different shapes. And we don't have time to talk about all 6. You can find them all on thewritepractice.com. But I do want to talk to you about the top 3 story arcs, because these are the story shapes of so many best-selling books. Let's take a quick look at each of these, and then we'll look at some examples as well. The first arc that I want to talk about is called the Double Man in a Hole story arc. This is the arc of so many bestsellers. Okay, it's actually the only best-selling arc that has a happy ending. You see the structure all the time. A character starts in a good place as it relates to the value, then they get stuck in a problem, and then they get themselves out of the problem, but then they go back into the problem, and then they get themselves out, and they have a happy ending. The Icarus Arc is the classic tragic structure. Character starts out in a bad place as it relates to the value, and then things start improving, they get really good, and then there's a turning point, and then everything that was going well starts going very badly, and then they end tragically. Okay. And then finally, the Oedipus arc. So you have a character, they're in a great place, but then things start going badly, but then they get themselves out of it, but then they crash and it ends tragically. Okay. So that's the Oedipus arc, another tragic structure. A lot of literary award-winning books fit this structure. So let's look at some examples of these. All right. We'll start with Double Man in a Hole. So let me know if you know what story this comes from, film this comes from. Yep, you guys are good. Very impressive. Yeah, this is the new remake of The Lion King, right? So let's talk about how this works. You have Simba. He's in a great place at the start. He's going to be king. He just can't wait. But then he gets into some trouble with some hyenas and his uncle. His dad doesn't have a good day. And then he kind of escapes and he goes into the jungle. And he's in the jungle living the Hakuna Matata lifestyle when his girlfriend shows up and says, you have to go face your uncle. Things are really bad. And he says no. And she says yes. And he says fine. And then he goes back to the kingdom, faces his uncle, looks like he's probably going to die. But then he doesn't die. He wins and he becomes king. Sorry if that's a spoiler. All right. So that's Double Man in a Hole. Another example. Anyone know what this comes from? I only have lion examples. I don't know why. But yep, this is Chronicles of Narnia. So looking at this, you have a bunch of kids. They're at their cousin's place or friends. I don't know, some old guy with a big house. And they stumble onto this magic cupboard, and it's looking kind of bad, actually. One of the kids gets caught up with this horrible queen, and it's not looking good. And Aslan has to save him, and then he has a really bad day, but it's okay because he gets out of it. And then they have to face the queen and fight her, and they win. And I think maybe one possum dies. I don't really remember. Anyway, there you go. Double Man in a Hole. Chronicles of Narnia. Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe. All right. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban also fits this arc. A lot of authors, what they'll do is they'll just send their character through arc after arc like this. And that's The Hobbit too, by the way. And it kind of makes sense because they broke it up into 3 films. You see that? So this is the spiders forest thing. This is fighting the dragon. This is the War of the 5 Kingdoms. Okay. So 3 arcs, just like that. Let's take a look at the Icarus Arc. Anyone know what this picture comes from? It's a little bit tricky. It might not be what your first thinking is. You got it. The old man in the sea. All right. Good work. So you have an old man. He hasn't caught a fish for like 60 something days, and everyone's feeling sorry for him. But then he goes out and he catches a fish, and everything's looking really good. He talks a lot about baseball. He talks about the radio. He's bringing this fish in. It's looking awesome. He does even catches the fish. We think he's the man, but then there's some sharks and there's a storm, and he keeps the fish, but it's gone by the end, right? But we're also kind of impressed with him. So there's the Icarus Arc, Old Man in the Sea. The Great Gatsby follows this arc, right? Fault in Our Stars follows this arc. All right, so that's the Icarus Arc. Let's talk about Oedipus really quickly. Gonna have to go fast now. All right, The Godfather follows this arc. Michael Corleone, he's a good person. We think he's great. He stayed out of the family business, but then his dad gets into trouble. He gets brought into the family business. He has to kill a guy. Then he gets sent to Italy. Things are looking okay. He might just be a normal person there, but then some bad things happen there. And then by the end of the story, he's a totally different person from where he started, right? Gone Girl follows this arc. And so does Hamlet. A lot of people say that The Lion King is just Hamlet with lions, and that's sort of true. But there's one major difference. Do you know what it is? Hamlet is an Oedipus story that ends with everyone dead at the end because he's Shakespeare, right? The Lion King ends positively. It's Double Man in a Hole. It's Disney. So it has a happy ending. That's the main difference. Otherwise, the structure is very similar, okay? The point of all of this is that best-selling books move. Best-selling books change. Bad books stay the same. It's not okay for your story to stay the same. You have to move throughout the value scale. If you're writing a love story, it's not okay for your characters to just be in love the whole time. That doesn't work. No one wants to read that story. It's not okay for them to hate each other the whole story either. You have to have the full movement through that whole value scale.
I hope you liked the video. If you did, make sure to click that like button, subscribe to the channel. If you want to go deeper into story structure, I published a new book called The Right Structure that goes deeper into story arcs, story structure, and more. You can find it at therightstructure.com. That's the WRITE structure.com. That's it for me. Happy writing. We'll see you soon.